I'll call this meeting of the Clackamas County Commission to order and ask for the roll call, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Damon?
Here.
Commissioner Bernard? Here. Commissioner Savas?
Here.
Commissioner Leininger?
Here.
Chair Lehan?
Here. And if you would, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion to approve the order of agenda.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the order of the May 31st, 2012 business meeting agenda.
I will second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Leininger that we approve the order of agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously and is approved. The first item we have, and we're trying to move through at a reasonably efficient clip today because we have a budget meeting that came up that we need to hold immediately after this one. But the first item is a presentation by Oregon Impact on DUI education for local youth. And we have with us Tim Hyder from Public and Government Affairs, who will introduce the various individuals here on this item, and we'll have some excellent PowerPoints. So,
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Tim Hyder from Public and Government Affairs, and as you noted, our first presentation today is from Oregon Impact. They're a local nonprofit organization that provides education, prevention, and awareness activities to local youth around the issue of and the dangers of driving while intoxicated. And this morning, I'd like to introduce Janelle Meredith. She's the Executive Director of Oregon Impact, along with Heather Hobson. She's the parent of a Milwaukee high school student, and Clackamas County District Attorney John Foote, who will also address you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Janelle.
come up and take a seat. You'll just have to share the mics.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here today. As you know, Oregon Impact is the administrator for the DUII Victims Impact Panel for Clackamas County, and we work with middle schools through high schools, offering students experiences to end impaired and distracted driving. I've had the privilege of working with our students all over the county, and I'm always delighted in their enthusiasm and their willingness to put themselves out there with their fellow students to offer an experience that they won't forget. We had 3 crash reenactments in Clackamas County this year, Clackamas High School, Estacada High School, and Milwaukee High School. One of the programs that we offer is the Operation Prom Night, a crash reenactment played out in real time with students from the school. The photos I'll be showing you are from the crash reenactment at Clackamas High School on April 27th. The storyline is 2 cars, one full of students that are on their way to prom and the other on their way to the movies at the Clackamas Town Center. The prom car is being driven by a driver who has been drinking and smoking pot. Each student in the reenactment is made up to mimic the injuries that they would have sustained in a real crash. Moulage makeup artists from American Medical Response work on each student based on the injuries. These students are not rehearsed, with the exception of those that are deceased. We do allow them to try out a body bag so they know what that feels like, and it's not the first time actually at the crash reenactment. While their makeup is being applied, AMR is talking with the students, explaining their injuries and how they would react in the actual situation. And this is the group of all students that were in the crash reenactment. This is the view from the skybox at Clackamas High School of what students see when they arrive to the assembly. The injured students have already been placed in the car at this time. So after the students are seated, Wild 107 DJ kicks off the event with music and a dance contest. This is the dance contest. Once the DJ gives the signal to the audio technician, the students hear the effects of a skid, a crash, and breaking glass. At the same time, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office deploys a flashbang, which is a small shake and a big bang that just stills everything, and volunteers uncover the car and the reenactment begins. This is always the moment that gets to me right after the flashbang. It is so silent. 1,600 quiet students and no birds, nothing. I mean, it just really stops everything to silence, and that's where this program really begins. This is one of our victims on the ground. So as the DUI driver stumbles out, a student passes by and is now part of the scene. With cell phones, this is a reality. If something like this happened, these kids would know so quick because they could text this information back and forth. Firefighters are on scene in real time. So while our DUI driver is walking around, it does take a couple minutes. That's a really long time to see your friends suffering in these cars. Even though it's a reenactment, it's still a long time. Firefighters come in and assess the injured passengers. A deputy from the sheriff's office is on scene to administer a sobriety test to our driver, and the others are working on extracting the passengers. He did not pass the sobriety test, and he is handcuffed, placed in a squad car, and taken off the scene. And this is a shot of the students watching. Again, the firefighters continue their work. And here they're preparing to cut the top off the car with the jaws of life to get out the victims in the car. This is the last shot of our prom victim on the hood before she's loaded into a body bag to be taken to the funeral home. Each student that's in the crash is asked to create a biography of if they lived through it, how the accident changed their life physically, and maybe what their future plans were going to be. If they end up deceased in the accident, they're asked to write what they would have done and how it affected their family. They either tape those and they are played for the audience in their own voice, or somebody reads it for them. At Clackamas High School, they also each asked their best friend to please come out to the car, and while their biographies were being read, to place a rose on the car. At the end of the assembly, we have a speaker address the students. At Clackamas High School, we had Ron Hansen speak. He killed a mother and 2 of her 3 children after drinking with his coworkers and getting behind the wheel. As you can imagine, it takes a great deal of coordination to make this all happen. So we have some great safety partners. American Medical Response puts in a great amount of time preparing the students, coordinating all the moulage makeup, and then at their work at the event itself. Bud's Towing keeps a warehouse for us of crash cars for use during Operation Prom Night. Clackamas Fire coordinates all the rigs that respond to the event. And the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office works with our DUI driver and sets the flashbang off for us. Omega Audio has done this crash reenactment for the past dozen years, and while this is going on, fills in the students on what the paramedics are actually doing. So the whole time there's voiceover so they know what's going on. Also in Estacada, we had the privilege of working with Chief Hull and Estacada Fire Department, who gave us some great new ideas for our program. And now Heather Hobson from Milwaukee High School is going to speak. She participated in the Milwaukee High School crash reenactment.
So my daughter came home. She was asked to participate in the program. She was in the vehicle that was going to the movies. And when she was asking if I would participate as a parent who arrives on scene, which from my understanding is very likely given texting and an accident so close to home, and in watching the reenactment again on the PowerPoint here, I was touched, and I said yes immediately because I understand the importance of a program like this. I'm not sure that this program, that you can measure how it discourages, if there's really a measurable tool to measure how it discourages teens from drinking and driving, or even getting in a vehicle with an impaired, whether it's alcohol or drugs. But I can say from my experience in the program and being part of it, and what led up to the actual reenactment, is that there were 1,200 students that were watching, that were completely engaged with a DJ and a dance contest. And the minute that flash bomb bang that went off, it was complete silence. And they were completely engaged in a process that I cannot help to think impacted, if not all, most of those students in some way. Whether they knew who the 8 people were that participated or not, they could envision their friend or family member in that vehicle. So I think the value in the program is huge. My daughter had a track meet the same day after, and I was approached by several students and actually faculty members that said, because I came, as I said, as a parent arriving onto the scene, I ran out, and they said the minute that they saw and heard me calling my daughter's name running to the scene, that even right there moved many to tears, that made that very real to them.
I have a letter I'd like to read from a Clackamas High School parent that we received. I would like to thank you for bringing the prom assembly to my daughter's school, Clackamas High School. The assembly really made an impact on her and, in fact, made her decide not to drink prior to the prom, and I would like to share my story. My daughter is a senior and had the usual prom plans. The irony is we had a huge prom dress situation that morning of the prom assembly, and I needed her to stay home and wait for UPS to arrive with the dress. As much as my daughter wanted her prom dress delivered that day, she said she had a prom assembly and didn't want to miss it. The dress was delivered early and she went to the assembly. That night, she was telling me what she saw and showed me some pictures. I could tell the assembly really affected her. Some of her closest friends were in those cars. She admitted to me that her group of friends were planning on having a few drinks prior to prom, and because of the assembly, they would no longer be doing that. I think this is a fantastic assembly, and it really does have an impact on our kids. With many thanks, Valine Welk. The loss of a severe injury due to a DUI is beyond a tragedy. It really does not affect a family, it destroys it. For those that have suffered from the results of a DUI crash, it is like standing at the edge of the ocean and the waves keep crashing down on them. It may recede for a while, but they always returned. All this is preventable, and it can all stop if we continue to educate our children. Giving pre-drivers and new drivers empowerment that certain behaviors, like phones and texting, are not safe behind the wheel, and why they might see an older brother or sister or mom or dad do this, we know it's not safe to do behind the wheel. And we have a few tools that we use with kids in school about that. So this is our newest tool. It was purchased with a $26,000 grant from State Farm Insurance. This car can be impaired or distracted with a radar gun. It fits 2 students, 1 driving, 1 passenger, and they run a course with it. On the second round of the course, we flip a switch, and it acts impaired or distracted. It is a 1-second delay is all it is, and they cannot control the car. The passenger rides with fatal vision goggles or beer goggles on so they can see what it feels like to be in that situation and be totally out of control. It's the only one in the Northwest. We're happy to have it at any school that wants it, but it really gives kids the opportunity to see what that feels like. Our crash car trailer that contains a car that was in a fatality accident in Oregon City is booked all summer long, all through the county, which is great. We have, unfortunately, a new vehicle to put in there that Bud's Towing is storing for us that was in the Holcomb accident in September. That car will be moved in. So we can continually replace the car, and it just becomes a new moving exhibit as we move it around. It works best by itself. Parents come up with kids and start conversations with their kids about what not to do behind the wheel. So we found it a great resource. And a couple small prevention tools we have, which work great, are the fatal vision goggles. They simulate what it's like to be impaired. And then we have this game at the bottom of the screen, which is just a matching game. And I thought, well, this will be a fun activity for students. But it really has become one of our greatest tools. They have to match the shapes, but not the colors, and only one color on the board at a time. And then we have them play it. And then we have them take their phone out and try to text and play it, just like they would be if they were driving. And they can't do it. And they see for themselves with their own cell phone in their hand what they can't do. And that's been a huge tool for us. For my part, in closing, I'd like to thank our board of directors of Oregon Impact who really support all the activities that we do. Safe Communities is another group I'd like to thank. Because of them, we have made contacts quicker than I could ever have imagined, and our programs are better and in front of more folks because of what they do. And also ODOT has been great helping us in any way we ask them. They're always stepping up and helping us. So I really appreciate them and their efforts as well.
We have the
Good.
video from Estacada.
Great.
This is from Estacada High School.
Rescue 111, Engine 110, 1109, Chaplain 110, AMR 280, AMR 281, report of a motor vehicle crash with injuries, Highway 211 and River Mill Road.
What you see is a typical example of a traffic crash that occurs in Clackamas County several times each month, a little ahead of the national average. At this crash scene, 2 cars are involved. It is early evening. The driver of the first car, Landon Young, is 17 years old. He is driving his family's car that he borrowed for the night. In the car with him are his girlfriend Sarah and 2 friends, Luke and Janie. Landon has been drinking. He has drank several beers and smoked a little weed. Tonight, they are all on their way to a party. It's prom night. The weather outside is nice for a change. The driver is finishing his junior year of high school and is looking forward to the school next year, too. His passenger in the front seat is Luke. He doesn't believe in using any type of intoxicants and doesn't believe in drinking and driving. He knows that the driver is intoxicated, but he couldn't talk him out of driving and drinking, and because he cares very much about his safety, he decides to go with him to watch out for him that evening. The remainder of the vehicle's passengers have also had a few beers earlier. They are excited, happy to be in a party state of mind.
You want to say something?
Just very briefly, good morning. My name's John Foote. I'm here both as a board member of Oregon Impact and also as your district attorney. And just to add my voice as a member of the board and as the district attorney to the value of this program, it's almost overwhelmingly volunteers, and it's a very, very small budget. And But what's great is the people who do this have great passion for it. I think you could feel the emotion. If you're a parent, you can feel the emotion of this. And I can tell you that our office sees these cases. They're real. I've met with the parents, and oftentimes it's both people are young, the driver who did it and the person who's killed. Sometimes they're friends. They know each other. And one's going to prison and one is dead. So they are real. They do happen, and they're terrible. So anything we can do to reach out to people, I think, is a great thing before it happens. And the young people respond to emotions, so this is an emotionally powerful thing. And Oregon Impact does other things, too. It does a DOE Impact panel that talks to people who've been convicted of drunk driving or driving under the influence. It's not drunk driving. It's less than that. So, and we prosecute these cases every day, the DOII. So this is a great, cost-effective program that does really good work. And Janelle is very passionate about it and is doing a great job. So I just wanted to come and share that with you. Thank you.
Thanks. So I wanted to say a couple things. So like Heather, I too am a mom who was involved in the Oregon Impact reenactment in Estacada, and they asked me to be the mom to come out on the field. But my father's internment was the day before, and it was a little bit too fresh, for me to be out there, so I didn't. There were a couple interesting things about it. In the video, the child that you saw being wheeled away on the gurney was my Janie, and it was very challenging, to watch that. But I was so impressed with how respectful all of the students were. I mean, like you had said, it was just silence. And those kids were impacted. There's a reason why it's called Oregon Impact. Sonia from Defy told me about a week later, or maybe 2 weeks later, that the girl came up to her and said, I was going to drive to the prom, but I asked my dad to drive me because I wanted to be safe because that assembly had such a big impact on me. And so these kids, they really did pay attention, and a lot of the students went up to Janie and said it was the most amazing assembly they'd ever participated in. And I just want to give a big thank you to all the partners. I was blown away by the volunteers and the partners. It wasn't, AMR didn't have just one ambulance out there. There were 3, and their public relations person and the director of AMR. The fire chief from Estacada, 2 fire rigs, Clackamas County Sheriff Deputy out there spending real time. Our local funeral chapel was out there loading kids in body bags. It was the radio station. It was just phenomenal, the amount of resources and volunteers it took to put that together. And I just want to thank everybody for that. So I did want to acknowledge some of the students that are here and board members of Oregon Impact and really anybody that has been involved in one of these reenactments. But first I'd like to acknowledge the students and see if any of them have come with anything they want to share. So we've got students from Milwaukee High School and Estacada High School. We've got Chrissy Smith. If you just want to stand, that way we can acknowledge you. And Ashley George and Stetson Riley and Nicole Adamson and Luke Youngberg, and Kyla McCauley, and Gina Scogan, and J.C. Settle. So these are, let's give them a... Did any of you guys want to say anything? Come on up. Or there's a mic right there with Mary.
I'm Stetson Riley. I'm from Estacada High School. I can say this has definitely made an impact on me. I know a lot of our kids aren't always making the best choices in our community, and it's kind of what our community is known for. And I think having Oregon Impact come out and help us direct our students into safe handling in their cars and getting better at figuring out what a better choice is for them. I think our kids, this definitely impact our kids. Our kids were totally silent. I've never heard our school that quiet. It was outside and they were cold and all of us were cold, and I've had a lot of kids come up to me afterwards and say that, this helped my choices come a long way. And it's helped me realize what has happened. We've had 2 deaths in our Estacada community. One was, she was driving and was going too fast, and one of our kids was just a tragic. He fell out of a tree. And the kid that died, Brennan Etheridge, it was shortly after we decided Oregon Impact came out, and I think that was fresh in the kids' memory, and then this, and having a lot of the top school kids, like our drunk driver was a 4.0 student. He had straight A's all of his high school career. He was number one in the junior class. He still is. But he had a lot of friends that didn't talk to him for a while. A lot of people didn't talk to him. A lot of the teachers gave him dirty looks. And he knew that was coming because he understood that we put him in a spot that put him with all these kids having fresh in their memory of how he killed all those students. We had 4 people die. I was the driver that was going to the movies, and Gina died. She was the passenger that was ejected from the car that was going to the movies. Sarah Shestad was the car, she was on our hood of the car going to prom. But in Luke Youngberg, he died. He was the passenger of the prom car. But all the kids that came out and actually participated in it were pretty good. We had a lot of painful things that went with that, and I know that this has probably helped me make a lot more better choices for my life than what I could have fallen into or could have gotten into.
So if we can have our community partners and members of our Oregon Impact Board stand who are here that have been involved in these reenactments, I'd like to show our appreciation to you as well. Do you have any closing remarks, Janelle?
I do not. Thank you for having me.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to?
Commissioner Bernard.
Actually, I was introduced to this program when I was mayor of Milwaukee, thanks to Mark Burnham, invited me to the reenactment at Milwaukee High School. It was very impactful, and for me today, I'm involved. I go to all the DUII graduations, and I often think, many of these people have to go be arrested many times before they're given the option to go through a process that, frankly, is hell for these folks. But many of them do graduate, and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of expense, not only for them, but for the court system. But it's an important program that I think this program got me interested in that process. Judge Tom is retiring, and we're having a discussion, or they're having a discussion, who's going to take this up. It's a great program, and some of these folks, have been arrested 7, 10 times, and I don't think that if they kill somebody, they're given this option. But it's a great program. One that the county supports and the court system supports. So thank you for introducing kids to what I remember my prom night. It was a fun event that would have been tragic had situations like this taken place. So appreciate your efforts and the board and the citizens for participating, and the students for doing this. I also did have an opportunity to spend 24 hours with TVFNR recently, and we experienced cutting the tops off cars and getting people out. And even one of our staff who had an accident earlier this winter experienced the same thing when she was involved in a head-on collision and only recently returned back to work. So we appreciate the efforts of AMR and other ambulance services, as well as the fire departments throughout the county that save lives. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leininger.
What a wonderful program. Thank you for creating it. I think even more people in the room than stood up just now probably had a role in supporting this program, and the fact that the students were involved with it. That is so inspiring. You know, I think I have an aunt who lost her life in an impaired driving situation, and a cousin whose life was forever changed because she was in the car and hurt in the accident. And, you know, I think more than almost anything, drunk driving, impaired driving, we can all think of times when people we love have either been on the side of wrongly being behind the wheel or having been hurt because someone else was wrongly behind the wheel. I mean, I think of lots of people I know who've been directly affected. And this is probably one of the most powerful interventions that I can imagine. I mean, what an important, wonderful thing, and what great teamwork with the Sheriff's Office and AMR and the District Attorney and the local nonprofit community and the local education community. And so thank you. And Commissioner Damon, thank you for having the great insight to bring this to us so that we and the people who watch us on TV could learn about it today. So thank you. Yes.
Just want to recognize everyone and thank everyone for doing this. You know, I think we've all had some personal experiences with people we know and incidents in life that kind of changed all of us. But, you know, my business is on a boulevard, McLaughlin Boulevard, and I don't know how many accidents have occurred that I've actually heard the sound, you know, and been out there and witnessed, you know, the aftermath, if you will. And, you know, we read about it in the newspaper, you know, and people don't realize, well, geez, we lost a friend, or I kind of knew that person, or I saw that person. But I think this reenactment is extremely valuable. It ought to be a requirement for every high school graduating class, or to be part of it. You know, it should be out there at every graduating class. And all I can remember is when I was in high school and going through driver's training was the films, the videos. They'd show you a video of, you know, the aftermath and try to give you that little bit of a shock treatment. But I think that reenactment is so much more powerful. I appreciate everyone's taking the role in doing this. It is valuable. Keep going. Just keep doing what you're doing and get that message out there. So I want to just thank you all for doing that.
And I would echo everything my commissioners have said, but just to say that that programs like this there's probably no better way to actually have an impact on saving lives and saving tragedy than programs like this, because far and away for young people, the greatest risk to your life and health is when you're behind the wheel, is car accidents. Many of those because of distractions of one sort or another or intoxicants. And I was just reading statistics for another reason, but 24% of fatal car accidents in Oregon involve teenage drivers for one reason or another. And I think there are very few of us, sounds like, sitting up here or in the audience who have made it through high school without losing a classmate. The percentages it is just far and away the biggest risk to your life and health is are traffic accidents. So anything that we do as a community, as public officials, emergency responders, teachers, students, to combat this is the most important thing we can do to reduce death and injury, because that's where it happens. And so my hat is off to, don't wear a hat, that's right, to everyone who's involved at every level in programs like this, because they are truly impactful. And with that, I think we'll ask all of the students to come forward, and we'll do a quick photo op down here in the front.
Parents and board members,
yep.
too.
Parents, board members, students.
I assume with us.
Anyone who feels like they should be part.
How are you? Good. How are you doing? Good.
So Chief and District Attorney Foote, if you could join us too, I think that would really make the photo that much more powerful, if the Chief is still here, since you're so involved with the program. You can do it. Should we? And also, anyone from the Sheriff's Office who's involved with the program, I think we would love to capture what a big team effort is. AMR.
I want to see all your faces, so if you're hiding behind someone. Okay, and look here at the camera. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to take another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's good.
And thank you to all of you for coming today. With that, I guess we're moving on. Our next item is presentation and acceptance of the Traffic Safety Commission's 2011 annual report. We have Joe Merrick here from County Engineering, and he has a presentation on transportation safety. Very similar,
morning.
very appropriate following our last.
Thank you. Good morning, Charlie Hand, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here today, and I wanted to talk to you today about actually items 2 and 3, so our Traffic Safety Commission annual report as well as our Safe Communities annual report, and kind of wrapped around a safety theme to build upon the presentation that you've seen earlier. So as we look at transportation safety, it's really saving lives and enhancing communities. And again, my name is Joseph Merrick. I'm a traffic engineering supervisor, and I'm also the director of the Clackamas Safe Communities program. And with me today is Tiffany Hicks with Health, Housing, and Human Services, and Patty McMillan, who is our Safe Communities coordinator, who does an incredible job moving our program along. And first of all, I want to thank you for all your support in transportation safety. Without your support, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today, so thank you. So things I want to talk about today, just a little glimpse into transportation safety in the county, and then cover our 2 annual reports, the acceptance of those annual reports, and then also discuss real quickly some examples of some of the partnerships and collaborations that are going on around transportation safety in the county. And I want to briefly introduce the Transportation Safety Action Plan that we're just completing, and also talk about a broader issue of building a countywide safety culture to help us and continue our efforts of reducing serious injury and fatality crashes in the county. Looking at the county transportation system, a few little safety facts. There's 1,400 miles of county-owned roadways that we oversee. County's pretty large for a county west of the mountains anyway, and almost 1,900 square miles with about 380,000 people plus or minus. Our Transportation Safety Action Plan looked at 2005 through 2009 data, so a lot of the numbers I'm going to refer to today come from that report in those time periods. The county's typically 3rd or 4th highest in the state for number of fatalities, and that's out of 36 counties. So we actually are part of driving where the state is at with regard to fatal and serious injury crashes. So we're an important part of that safety equation on a statewide basis. When you look at our overall system, on all the roads in the county, we've seen about 160 fatalities, and when you combine fatality and incapacitating injury or severe injury crashes, we're almost 1,100 over that 5-year period. Total crashes of like 19,500. So lots of crashes on our road systems, less on the county road systems, but significant just the same. Interesting thing as we look at crash factors, there's 3 factors that are considered: the roadway factors, driver factors, and vehicle factors. Interestingly, when there's a fatal crash, I often get a phone call, you need to fix the road, it contributed to the crash. In fact, 3% of the crashes, the roadway is the sole factor in the crash. 93%, the driver is a factor in the crash. And obviously the driver factor, in many cases, it's a preventable crash. And so it causes us to think about how we approach the problem. Obviously, I'm an engineer, so I tend to think about engineering solutions. But really, it's much broader than that. So what we really know about crashes is, first of all, they're random. I can't predict where the next crash is going to be. And as we all know, there's a whole host of different cause factors. We heard about some from Oregon Impact, drinking and driving. There's a whole host of others that we can all in our personal lives, where we know of people, there was, this happened and that happened that resulted in the crash. So the approach is a very complex approach. It's not one size fits all. So we use what's called the 5E approach, where we combine education, emergency medical services, enforcement, and engineering, combined with an evaluation loop to make sure what we're doing is working. And using that approach, we're able to affect the numbers and build upon those. So the rest of the presentation today, along with the annual reports, I want to just capture the diverse approaches that we're using in the county to affect traffic safety. The first thing is our Traffic Safety Commission, and so our annual report. And Brian Burke, the chair of the commission, is here today, so I want to thank him for being here today. The Traffic Safety Commission is one of the longest continuously operating traffic safety commissions in the state of Oregon, and I'm quite honored to be the liaison for the commission, which I've been since the mid-90s. The mission statement of the Traffic Safety Commission is to give the citizens of the county a forum to voice traffic safety concerns, evaluate related issues, provide a liaison with county agencies, and promote traffic safety. And to that end, the commission had a busy year, and I'll just quickly go over these. The commission has helped with, provided terrific guidance on our Transportation Safety Action Plan, as well as guidance on our vehicle wraps. They also helped us get a grant that we'll be carrying forth this summer on a roadway safety audit. And then their big events is they organize the Town Center Roadway and Safety Fair along with Safe Communities and the Happy Valley Transportation and Traffic Safety Commission. Then they participate in the county fair with a booth, which they attend almost 90% of the time, which is great for all volunteer commission, with many of them have jobs and families. So we have a variety of safety partners, and around the special features I like to talk about with the commission. And so our Town Center and Roadway Safety Fairs are a little special feature. And on the slide, you'll see some of our many partners. And our 2011 event was another successful event, and we're looking forward to already planning for our 2012 event. And this event is really another great example of how partners with a common interest get together to outreach safety messages. And it's done in collaboration, and so we're all working together, which we all know is a more efficient way of doing business to outreach safety messages. And so at this time, I would like to request that you accept the 2011 Traffic Safety Commission Annual Report and answer any questions that you may have about that document.
Commissioner Bernard.
Actually, I don't have any questions. I have a comment. The county commission has made your programs a priority, and I really would like to thank ODOT for their partnership. They've been long-time investment in Clackamas County safety, and without their support, we wouldn't be where we are today. But it's also important that the county be a good partner and invest in this program. And that's why ODOT's still at the table, frankly, is because when the sheriff determined that many of these programs weren't supportable in his budget, the commission decided to invest. And Patty's here and does a great job moving the process forward and communicating well with all our partners and putting on all these events. And it's just a success we should all be proud of. The county fair, I've had an opportunity to work with kids riding those little cars around, and that's a lot of fun. And I really enjoy that. And I always ask them if they have insurance. And every kid looks at me like, "What are you talking about?" I think Mommy does. But anyway, so it's a lot of fun. So I encourage you to participate at the county fair and spend an hour with the kids, because it is a lot of fun. And it's often quite hot out there on that little pavement. But appreciate all the board members who volunteer board members who also participate, and the Sheriff's Department in their participation, emergency services, and Oregon Impact, and all those groups. So when we're ready for a motion, I'd be happy to make it. Are we ready?
This would be an appropriate time.
Okay, so I move we accept the Traffic Safety Commission 2011 annual report.
I'll second that.
Been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Savas that we accept the Traffic Safety Commission's 2011 annual report. Any other discussion on this item? Commissioner Damon.
I just want to say how disappointed my children are that they are too big for Safety Town, and that if there was a teenager or adult version of that I think that would be wildly popular at the fair. So when I heard from the Oregon Impact folks about the little cart that they can impair and the beer goggles, I think that would be a big hit.
For the fair. Yeah. There's no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0 and is accepted. And wait. Okay.
Okay. So the
Moving
next
on.
annual report is the 2011 Clackamas Safe Communities Annual Report. And the mission of that program is to reduce fatalities and injuries in Clackamas County. We've been largely transportation focused because nearly half of the trauma registries are due to transportation-related incidents. The Safe Communities program is very busy. Patty stays very busy and keeps me very busy with this program. It's a very diverse program. We encompass the 5E approach within this program. And for 2011, or during 2011, we expanded our partnerships with H3S, which we'll hear from Tiffany in a little bit. And then we completed our vehicle wraps, which there's a picture of, which we're very proud of. And we continue to enhance a lot of our educational outreach and broadening our Safe Communities Coalition, as well as increasing the distribution of safety messages in a variety of ways. I want to acknowledge and thank the Safe Communities Advisory Board for their unending support, and that includes the Alliance for Community Traffic Safety, American Medical Response, Commissioner Bernard with the Board of County Commissioners, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Roberts, and I saw Under Sheriff Lang in there, and the Clackamas County Fire District 1, as well as Cam Gilmore with the Department of Transportation Development, Estacada Fire, and of course ODOT, and Walt McAllister is here, who's going to say a few words at the end of the presentation, and Oregon Impact, of course, Janelle, and Traffic Safety Commission, Brian Burke serves on that advisory board. And a couple of real quick projects I want to go over from the Safe Communities to, again, build upon that diversity of how we outreach safety messages and do things to help reduce the number of crashes in the county. The first one is the school driver education programs, and it's a lot of outreach that Patty does around impaired driving, speed, and distracted driving, which are risks that are important in Clackamas County. And Patty does a variety of outreach to schools and as far as guest speakers with many of the driver's ed programs. And so this is another way to outreach, and we outreach to about 1,500 kids annually. We also have our Teen Triple Threat program, which focuses on teens creating messages for teens using a variety of ways to send that message via print, radio, or video. And so we have some of our past winners, and so this is another good outreach to have students, develop messages for students. Here's an example of one of the messages from our 2008 Teen Triple Threat. And so it's another good outreach. And this particular one, there was a video, and do we have time to go ahead and play that? This is a student-produced video.
Yeah. Hey, what's up? No, I'm just driving around. Oh, man. Oh, hold on. No. Yeah, it's all good.
And this is a PSA that we still use, and through many of our kiosks and other outreach methods that we have. Another program we have, as mentioned, our Safety Street program, where we have the little cars for the kids to drive, and it's actually an opportunity for kids and parents to learn about traffic safety. We have actually real miniature traffic signs that encapsulate things like school crossings and railroad crossings and stop signs that kids can learn about and parents can refresh their memories. And we run about 3,500 kids a year through that program. We actually have two kits. We have a trailer with a larger kit and a small roll-away kit, so we can actually have 2 safety streets going at once. And then we also have our radar sign program. We were fortunate to be able to use our Safe Communities grant to purchase the radar signs, which are a temporary sign that we put out in neighborhoods at citizens' request. We'll leave those signs out for about a month, and we rotate those around the county. So that's an active program. We actually have a total of 5 signs that we deploy in the field with the help of our traffic maintenance department. And so this is another good program. And again, another form of outreach. This is education outreach to remind people about the speeds that they need to travel. With that, I'd like to thank all our advisory board and others for supporting our program, and ask that you accept the 2011 Safe Communities Annual Report.
And I just was going to ask, did either of your presenters here want to say anything on these items?
I was going to have them cover. I have a couple additional projects related to the 2 programs that I wanted to cover real briefly.
With the motion, if someone would like to make a motion on this.
I would say, Chair Lehan, I move we accept the Safe Communities 2011 Annual Report.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Damon and seconded by Commissioner Leininger that we accept the Safe Communities 2011 Annual Report. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0 and is unanimously approved. So turn it back over to you.
I'm going to quickly move forward here. Some of the other emerging partnerships to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes I wanted to go over with you very briefly. First of all, we have an underage alcohol sales detail. And real briefly, that's one where we use a partnership with a variety of agencies where you use cadets to really test the retailers to see if their clerks are looking at the driver's license, to look at the date and make sure they're not selling to underage buyers. And so this is another good example of how we affect the alcohol sales by making sure it's not being sold to people who shouldn't be buying it. And in the interest of time, I'm actually going to, the compliance is interesting. Out of the March survey, there were 168 stores and restaurants that were visited, and there was about a 78% compliance rate. And the terrific part of that is 131 of these folks did not sell. The bad part is 37 did, and I think that's kind of disappointing. And these are cadets, they just hand them their driver's license and say, I want to buy alcohol, and it's incumbent upon them, they're responsible to make sure that they're of the correct date. So there's work to do on that. The next thing I wanted to have Tiffany Hicks talk about is the binge drinking grant that H3S is working on, that we happen to have some common data interest needs that brought us together. So Tiffany?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I do work for H3S in the Division of Children, Youth, and Families under Director Rod Cook, and I'm currently working on a project to reduce binge drinking and high-risk drinking in the young adult 18 to 25-year-old population. Well, I very definitely appreciate all of the efforts with the drinking and driving and impaired driving issues. There are other issues with alcohol, and my project seeks to bring more awareness to those issues. For example, in the state of Oregon, there's also about 1,400 deaths a year that are related to alcohol disease. There are about 243,000 people in our state that are dealing with drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and dependence disorders. And there are over 5,000 person-to-person violent crimes in the state of Oregon every year that are attributed to alcohol use. So just to bring some attention to those issues, we are We have received a grant in the county of Clackamas from the state of Oregon, and it is for this project. We've just recently completed an assessment process piece, and now we are working on the planning piece of what we're going to do to actually affect change in Clackamas County. Some of the things that we actually measured were retail availability, criminal justice data, social availability, promotional issues, community norms, and individual factors that are related to alcoholism. During the assessment, we used some mapping procedures to map age populations of age and demographics of people that live in our county, as well as the retail outlet density of the county. And as I was going through this process was when I met Mr. Merrick, and we learned that we had some common goals as he was working on some mapping projects with the DUI crashes, which was of a lot of interest to me. And we had a couple further discussions, and after that, kind of a new project was born where we're going to be trying to collaborate our data, and we'll be able to use that in the future for reports and hopefully grant writing and sustainability for future projects like this one. Binge drinking is considered to be about 5 or more drinks per sitting for a male, or 4 or more drinks per sitting per a female adult. And at this time, we have decided that for Clackamas County, we're going to be addressing retail availability, social availability, and the community norms. Retail availability in Clackamas County is quite high, and the community norms is kind of, how do I say this? It refers to the acceptability or unacceptability of a behavior. In this case, it's high-risk drinking, and it seems that it's all too common in our community and probably in our state as well, that the idea of just as long as they don't drive, it's okay, and as long as they make responsible choices, it's kind of become tolerated. My project it seeks to change that norm a little bit to get a little bit more of a health conscious position. I have created a task force which is assisting me on this project, and it's represented in the task force is the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, the Lake Oswego Police Department, the Oregon National Guard, Sandy Police Department, Oregon Impact, Safe Communities, and 2 of our prevention coalitions within the county, Defy from Estacada and Oregon City Together. So we have been working on some unique strategies, and I'm really excited to build our capacity and be able to implement these strategies coming very soon. I'm also very pleased and thankful that Mr. Merrick invited me to join him on this project with the data compilation, and gives children, youth, and families a unique opportunity for future grant writing and sustainability and other things. So I'm very excited to be part of that, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, so real quickly, the last thing I want to talk to you about, and I'll be very brief, is our Transportation Safety Action Plan, which we're just wrapping up. And the mission of that plan, which starts to pull all this together, is reducing fatalities and serious injuries on on roadways in Clackamas County by 50% by 2022. So that's a 50% reduction over 10 years. So it's a very ambitious plan, but I think it's a very doable plan, looking at trying to save 16 lives and 125 less serious injuries over that time period. And it's really an effort of taking what you've heard today, using that 5E approach to pull our safety groups and work with them to really focus on certain safety issues, and really building upon our partnerships. And it's an ambitious goal, but I believe it's a doable goal. And we need to look at committing funding and committing resources to achieve the goals. And really what I see is, I mean, from 20 years of working here dealing with traffic safety, it's being persistent. It's a big ship, and we have kind of a little tugboat, but we can turn it. It just takes a little bit of effort. And so I think as we move forward, I think one of the things we'll want to talk about more is building a countywide safety culture in terms of we have some good grassroots level efforts. And I think it may be the right time to start thinking about some higher level efforts to bring the two together to build that safety culture. And with that, my presentation is complete. I did want to have Walt McAllister, who's our grant administrator from ODOT, say just a few words really briefly, if that would be okay.
Sure.
And then open it to questions that you may have.
Chair Leon, did I get that right? I'm Walt McAllister with the Oregon Department of Transportation's Transportation Safety Division, and I just wanted to express our thanks for your continued support that the work of your Department of Transportation's and Development has put forward on safe communities in partnership with, as you saw, an extensive list. And I wanted to particularly point out that with together everyone achieves more. And when we work together, when we work in coalitions, when we work collaboratively, when we work on these issues together, we propel the state's efforts, the county's efforts, the city's efforts to save these lives. And as we saw, there are still too many lives being taken in Clackamas County. As a resident here, my family and friends are driving these roadways right alongside yours. And there are certain roads that I think, man, I sure wish they didn't have to drive that today. But I think that with the efforts that we're continuing to put forward with professionals like Joe, with professionals like the folks at the Sheriff's Office, that we can make a difference. And unfortunately, there's not enough light here, so I guess we're going to skip my notes. And so it's the partnership has been really fruitful over a long period of time. The numbers continue to decline, but as you saw, we're still in, Clackamas County is still fourth. That's just too high. We need to continue to work this issue. It's just there are too many lives that matter. Oh, I know one thing that was really important to point out to you is every crash takes a toll on society. There's a high societal cost. And I believe most constituents know this, but it doesn't hurt to remind everybody in the room that every time somebody dies, there's a huge societal cost. We've invested in education in that person. They may have invested in themselves in education. There's the cost of burial. There's the cost of supporting the family after the death. Those costs continue to go on. And as you know, you're looking at your human services unit, there's a tremendous amount of costs associated with these crashes. Then we look at the other cost that is associated with the crash, the immediate aftermath of the crash. We've got fire trucks, we've got ambulances, we've got business losses because oftentimes that person's a valued employee at a local business. That loss continues to go on every day in this county, and anything we can do to reduce those numbers is a savings to the citizens of this county and to this state. And the final thought is, Joe pointed out there are literally over 1,000 debilitating injuries. It's not just the deaths. Anybody that's tended a traumatically brain-injured individual knows that there's a dollar cost and then there's a human cost, a life potential cost lost. If we take an individual that's bright and talented, mother, for example, that has to tend their traumatically brain-injured child for 20 to 30 years, that person's ability to contribute has been significantly reduced. So I think it's important to just, we've had some really great presentations, and I think it's important to remind ourselves that we're doing this work because it's making a difference and it's reducing the costs, and not just the dollar cost, but the human costs. So with that,
thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Bernard.
Well, just some quick comments. Traffic Safety Commission, Safe Communities, the partnership in DTD with in the budget that we talked about just yesterday, clearing brush, painting the lines, all those things that we spend a lot of money on save lives. And this group has worked hard with many partners to, I'd like to see Clackamas County the number, let me see, there's 36 counties, number 36 someday. So that'd be a great goal. And ODOT and their partnership, it's amazing, but I attended one meeting, and my first meeting with the Safe Communities, and had ODOT basically say, hey, we need you guys to be partners and invest in these programs, or maybe we'll, reconsider whether we should continue the long-term investment that they've had in Clackamas County, and we stepped up and did exactly that. And so I'm proud of the commission for moving forward on that. And I'm proud of ODOT for sticking in a partner, and for bringing Patty over to work with Joe, which she had done for quite a while anyway, and move this project forward. So congratulations, and look forward to working with you in the near future.
Any other questions?
I just have one short question. So Patty didn't get a chance to say much, but one of the programs that that she administers is the stop sign sticker, and I wish I had one to show you, but it's the stickers that go in the windows of merchants do you have one? That go into the windows of stores that sell alcohol, basically saying, don't sell alcohol to minors. And one of the brilliant strokes that she does is put these in the hands of youth for them to distribute to the stores in their own communities. And so, what's more powerful than having a teenager walk in with one of these stickers to their own convenience store in their own town and say, can you please put this in your window, and don't sell alcohol to me or my friends. And so that's happened in Estacada. These are up in all the windows, and these are free, and Patty can get them in the hands of youth groups to do that in your communities.
It was IDEA that was suggested at the conference, brought it back, and worked with the coalitions and actually the Office of Children and Families really has taken that to the next step. But yes, it's been a program I saw one on the sign next to the Albertson store, little store, and it just made my day.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for mentioning that. It's been a good program. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merrick.
I also have some drive safely magnets, so something to adorn your vehicle.
Okay.
If it's made of
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And that brings us to, since we have no discussion items, it brings us to citizen communication. This is an opportunity to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda, or are on the agenda but not scheduled for public testimony. And I have a number of cards here. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And the first two are Ed Kirchhoffer and Ted Coons. And the second two will be Vince Stafford and Gary McQueen.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm Ed Kirchhoff, the Fire Chief for Clackamas Fire District 1, and thank you for taking the time to hear input from the Fire District regarding the RFP for ambulance service in the county. As you know, the Fire District serves more than half the residents in the county, and ambulance transports in the Fire District make up more than half of the transports throughout the ambulance service area. As such, we have a significant stake in this process. The county commissioners have shown great leadership in continuing to move this process forward with an achievable and meaningful RFP schedule. We urge you now to continue moving that process forward. We commend the county's public health staff for their efforts in putting together the ASA plan document and providing multiple avenues for input from the EMS Council and others. The process to date has been exceedingly transparent and inclusive. Some people will suggest that the county should not proceed with an RFP for ambulance service. They will argue that the RFP is too expensive, or that in these economic times we simply can't afford it. This argument is simply false. When considered in the context of the net revenue generated by the contractor, the cost of the RFP is quite inexpensive. Commonly stated cost for an EMS RFP is $300,000. This number is exceptionally small in the context of the value of an RFP. The net revenues, as reported by AMR, are approximately $11.8 million per year after collections. In the potential 12-year term of the existing RFP, this revenue totals more than $140 million. An RFP is projected to cost merely 0.2% of that total. We believe that our citizens have a basic expectation that public contracts must ensure the best value, assured performance, and a fair and competitive process free from political pressure, especially when they're of this magnitude. As you work toward the development of an RFP, we ask that you consider a number of factors. First, and perhaps most important, is price for service should be a significant component of the scoring of an RFP. Ensuring that price is wrapped into the evaluation process allows the commissioners to ensure the best value to patients. There should be performance requirements for urgent as well as emergent responses. Performance should be monitored on a call-by-call basis, and the revised ambulance service plan removes penalties from any call that exceeds specific time requirements. We recommend the RFP describe the potential penalties if long response times become excessive. The RFP should include methods to encourage development of the entire EMS system, potentially integrating EMS system resources so as to provide improved outcomes for patients, improved safety for personnel, and improved oversight of the system. The RFP should include important measures of quality, safety, or factors other than response time so that the system can be fairly evaluated based on the quality of its performance. And finally, Clackamas Fire asks that the RFP include a continuing strong and well-funded system enhancement fund that will provide for what we know will be expensive improvements in the EMS system. The Fire District recognizes that the road before you won't be easy. However, with the leadership that you have shown, it's clear that Clackamas County is on track to ensure more value to consumers and a better quality throughout the EMS system. As always, the Fire District stands ready to assist wherever it may. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may, before I let Mr. Kirchhofer go, I first want to we have a theme this morning. I guess it's safety and response to emergencies and crisis and everything, and I really appreciate your role that you played, Chief Kirchhofer, with the Fire District. And I've been hearing, and I really value all the inputs I've heard about this process. I think it's really important that we have good representation from all the people involved, all the agencies and stakeholders and constituent groups that are involved in this. And I guess I relied a lot on the EMS Council to play a pretty good role in this. And from my understanding, that maybe there's ways of improving or enhancing the representation from many different spectrums, regionally, constituent groups and so forth. Could you maybe help us in the very near future, maybe better populate that or talk about different ways of enhancing the role of the EMS Council in this process? Because I don't have the industry experience or knowledge as a commissioner, and I rely on committees and expertise and experts of the field, and I would value your input on that.
Thank you very much, and we're happy to assist wherever we can in this process.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ted Coons. I'm the Fire Chief and Chief Executive Officer of the Canby Fire District. On the card, I had a thing to mark yes or whether I was for the RFP or against, and it was yes or no. So I marked no, but really maybe would have been a good spot for me. Just have a couple of quick concerns I want to share with you. First of all, regarding the RFP for ambulance service in the county. On February 29th, I sent a letter to county staff, and I know several other fire chiefs in the county did, about the concern about putting the ambulance service out for an RFP. At the same time, the commissioners met with their advisory group, the EMS Council, to discuss the situation. And after that meeting, a decision was made to conduct two parallel processes. One of those being an RFP process, another one to look at what other counties do when it's time to renew contracts and continue those on. The first move forward with the RFP, and the second was to do the renewal process. And now it's come to our attention that the second part of the process is not going to be looked at, and that the county is only moving forward with the RFP process. This has come to quite a surprise to the Canby Fire District, as we believe that the parallel track process was being worked on by county staff. Canby Fire is very concerned about the decision that we believe that this system used for renewal in Washington County is working really well and would save the taxpayers of Clackamas County hundreds of thousands of dollars as you move forward with the RFP. I have been involved in every process in Clackamas County since the first one regulating ambulance service, and I was trying to remember, that was back in 1990, which probably shows my age. Anyway, every time in the past we've gone through the RFP process, that's ended up in a situation where we've been in some form of litigation of one kind or another. And while I'm not opposed to an RFP process, I just want to be really cautious as we move forward. And in this case, I think the speed in which we're traveling sets us up for some problems down the road, and I don't want to end up in that litigious point of view again. The system we have in Clackamas County, we're unique in the fact that what we have works. It works fairly well. And while I do admit that there could be improvements, and the EMS Council has talked about several of those in the proposed ambulance service plan, I think that all needs to be considered as far as being in a hurry to get something done. So formally, the Canby Fire District would like to request that the board direct staff to resume the examination of contract renewal methods used by other counties and apply the brakes, basically, or slow down the process on the RFP in order to make sure that all alternatives are well vetted before you make your decision on how to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. Vince Stafford and Gary McQueen.
Oh, okay. Chief Stafford has asked that I go ahead. Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you for your time. I'm Gary McQueen, Fire Chief of Sandy Fire District. And my issue today, obviously, is discussion of the ambulance RFP. My fire district serves 77 square miles of Clackamas County and responded to 1,806 alarms in 2011, most of which involved an ambulance. We're the primary provider of EMS in our community, and we work very closely with our ambulance provider. The board has directed county staff to start a new ambulance RFP process. At the last board meeting I attended, there was a favorable discussion of a parallel process that would evaluate another option, but it looks like this is now off the table. I'm supportive of a process similar to Washington County that would allow for the extension of an ambulance contract, provided that needs are being met countywide. Evaluation of ambulance rates could be included in this process. The determination of whether our needs are being met might best be handled by the Clackamas EMS Council representing the entire county. The EMS Council is a body that you have appointed to work on EMS issues, and they've been working very hard on the new ambulance service plan. Have you asked them for an opinion or recommendations on the RFP process or an alternative? I'm pleased that the board extended the current contract for 1 year, but even with the 1 year extension, this process is extremely time compressed. I have every confidence that your staff will do their best to do a diligent job, but at the same time, but anytime things are hurried, there's a greater opportunity for some kind of an error. This occurred during the last process, and it caused a great deal of problems for everybody here. We're all aware that our county is very unique and difficult to serve. I fear that a full RFP process would end up focusing more on ambulance rates than service. It'll come down to money. It would be easy for any company to outbid another with lower rates, maybe even just a few dollars, without fully knowing what it takes to serve the area. So for me, it's not just what it costs, but what is the service worth? My agency enjoys excellent service from the current provider, and I'm always going to be concerned if there's a possibility that we could lose that level of service that we now have. So I encourage the board to consider an option for extending the agreement that would potentially save a tremendous amount of staff time and effort and probably cost us a lot less. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Vince Staff from Walla Fire District, fire chief there. My district's about 105 square miles and then 350 square miles of ambulance service. I'm one of the 3 ambulance providers in the county. My concern also is just that we were under the impression we were going down a dual process, and that seems to have been taken off the table. Again, you know, it's RFPs can be good, but also if we can work through, like the Washington County example of a partnership with them and build a system from that without going through this costly and obviously very emotional process. We have a great working relationship with the current provider, and the issues that develop there is that sometimes when you change that, it takes years. There's one that happened in this state, and they're saying about 5 years into it, and they're still now just getting where they have a good working relationship. Not that they're opposed to each other, it just takes to build those relationships. It takes that time, where AMR and ourselves and other districts have been together a very long time, and we work very well together. like I said, been working really hard on this. I'm also on the EMS Council, but I'm not here to represent the EMS Council today, just my fire district. So been working very hard. A lot's been accomplished in a very short amount of time. Like I said, it's very compressed and seems to be rushed a little bit. And I thought that was part of the extension, was that we could go down this dual process to look at what would be best for the county. And I think there's some great minds on that council and where we could build this system too in a good partnership. So thank you for your time.
Okay. And the next two I have up are Carl Koenig and Mike Dyke. But just to clarify, or perhaps the administrator could clarify, my understanding is that part of the reason that we're on track for an RFP process to complete by the end of this year, but understanding that that's a tight timeline, we went ahead and extended the contract through June of 14. So that if we don't meet that, there's a whole nother year to complete that. I mean, there's enough time, and I will let you speak. And my understanding is, in terms of the alternate contract renewal process, that we are still considering that in the next contract and looking at how Washington County's works. It just wouldn't be in this contract. But it might be replaced as early as the end of the year. But we did want to take that pressure off time-wise so that we have enough time, which is why it was extended.
And that would help the transition time as well if there is a transition. But yes, that's the operating instructions we're working under. I think it might be a closure in April of 14 and not June of 14.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But that's essentially our working understanding.
To give us an extra year in case we don't meet that timeline. And we still are considering the alternative
Yes, for the
contract.
subsequent contract period.
Alternative renewal.
I just want to, my recollection is quite similar to that, but I just want to just add that I know that I raised the issue and suggestion that I know that drafting the RFP and how it's done ought to be really a collaborative effort, because you're really setting, really a blueprint, if you will, on moving forward, which we really can't escape from. And to avoid that litigation or anything else in the future, I want to make sure that we had, again, the expertise from all the different people involved to make sure that was done, as intelligently and as fairly as possible. So that's the proviso that I requested then. I'm still requesting today. And maybe we can refer to staff later on about making sure that that's the path we're going down. But it sounds like we veered, so I'll listen.
Okay. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Carl Koenig. And Madam Chair and Commissioners, thanks for allowing me to testify or speak this morning about ambulance service in Clackamas County. A couple things to note. I am for the RFP process, as indicated by the check mark, the hanging chad on my blue piece of paper, and that all the fire chiefs speaking here, minus one, are all former members of Local 1159. I thought that was a very, very strong indicator of leadership potential within the Firefighters Union. I come before you today as president of the Professional Firefighters Association of Clackamas County, Local 1159, representing the 275 career firefighter, paramedics, and EMTs of Boring, Canby, Clackamas, Estacada, Lake Oswego, and Molalla. And with that, I've been looking around trying to figure out what direction and how to really use up my 3 minutes, and also there's many people behind me here that don't think I can get it done in 3. So we'll see. I took this excerpt from the county's mission statement: provide active and responsible leadership through focused investments, innovative partnerships, and citizen empowerment to create healthy, safe, and sustainable communities. And I thought, how can we incorporate an RFP process and actually meet the mission statement and goals of the county? And I came back to EMS is a very human endeavor. We heard some very riveting testimony from Oregon Impact, safe communities, all those things. From our perspective, treating those in dire need of help is a personally rewarding career and a societal necessity. And with that, it seems an active, and I being an active participant, I'm still a firefighter paramedic here in Clackamas County and have been since 1989, so 23 years, that maybe the business side of this has lost some of that human endeavor focus. And I want to speak briefly on that. I spoke this board, not this board, but but this entity, some 10 years ago, about setting some standards that protect those who serve the public in an emergency situation. And see in the draft that those things are sadly lacking. No workplace protections, just guarantees to profitability, and very little that protects the paramedics and EMTs. And as a union advocate, I know there's many other pieces to the RFP, but I feel compelled to talk about that. I'm also fairly confident that you've heard the saying, those who do not appreciate or respect history are doomed to repeat it. In regards to the regulation of ambulance service in this county, we seemingly have some collective amnesia going on. When this board was a 3-person entity, they deliberated over a winning contract that was deemed too dangerous to the public safety and unworkable to implement, so they kept the incumbent provider. They didn't want to wreak havoc on the citizens by awarding a relatively newcomer to the county, and that there was so much proprietary information and expertise in providing that they had to do it. All that did was give us 20% higher bills here in the community equity issues, administrative headaches, and lost potential in the name of profits, acceptable margins, and system enhancements. Why not award innovation and taking care of paramedics while taking care of the citizens that this exclusive contract serves? We have many dedicated professionals in this system, and I'd like to acknowledge all of them for their contributions: physicians, paramedics, EMTs, and administrators. We've done a lot of groundbreaking stuff here. And in closing, I just want the county to consider the county's mission statement and the human component of this service, and consider safeguards that protect those who serve at least as well as we protect the process and those who make money as a result of this contract. Thank you very much.
I hope you didn't have a bet on that one.
Yeah, let the record show Carl couldn't get it done in 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair Lehan, members of the commission. My name is Mike Dyke. I'm the fire chief and CEO for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue again appreciates the opportunity to provide comment on the county ambulance services plan. We see this current issue as, frankly, an opportunity to work with the county to make the necessary changes to the plan that would allow an EMS system in Clackamas County to work as one integrated system. As the second largest fire service provider in Clackamas County, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue has a strong desire to be a part of a solution that you and your staff develop. I would like to thank the Board of Commissioners for making emergency medical services a priority in the county. We appreciate having a sound integrated EMS system and have been encouraged by the parallel process being conducted in Clackamas County. We have been recently concerned staff has been directed to work on an RFP process and not pursue a parallel track regarding a rolling contract extension with performance indicators. In these economic times, we should be taking steps to maximize efficiencies within the current system, minimize duplication of services, reduce costs, and truly expand our collective ability to serve the citizens of Clackamas County with a fully integrated EMS system. TVF&R believes that this is best achieved with the current fire service providers in the county and a long-term secure contract with the current ambulance provider. Issuing an RFP for ambulance service has the potential to set us back rather than move us forward, not to mention the several $100,000 in cost. Lastly, we respectfully request that you continue to engage not only TVF&R in the process, but all fire service agencies working within Clackamas County. As you know, the county is very diverse, and the service needs vary from one area to the next. TVF&R would like to be a part of the solution of this as this process moves forward, and feels strongly that that part of that solution is to continue a parallel track regarding a rolling contract extension with performance indicators. Thank you very much. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Good timing. The next two cards I have are David Jorling and John Ludlow.
Good morning. My name is Dave Jorling. I live at 684 9th Street, Lake Oswego. I am here to address an issue or two with respect to the light rail initiative. Testimony has been presented here that alleges that Clackamas County can withdraw from the intergovernmental agreement for the funding of the Milwaukee Light Rail project because it is an agreement, not a contract. This is wrong. As any first-year law student knows after taking a course on contracts, the word contract is not even required to make a document enforceable in the courts. Even the definition of the word contract in Black's Law Dictionary is instructive. It begins with the phrase, a contract is an agreement. Even more important, contractual obligations can be created by statute. The Oregon legislature created a special type of contract, which we call intergovernmental agreements, for use by local governments in Chapter 190 of the Oregon statutes. Agreements entered into by local governments pursuant to this law are binding contracts on the governments that sign them. The Attorney General's office issued an opinion that the effect of IGAs is to, quote, create a binding obligation, unquote, on the parties to an agreement to perform the functions set out in the agreement. The Attorney General has also held that agreements entered by governing bodies are, by virtue of the statute, binding on any subsequent elected members of the governing body. I provided your clerk with copies of these opinions for your review. Thus, any attempt by the Clackamas County Commission, even one with an entirely new set of elected members, to withdraw from this agreement will be swiftly ruled a breach by the Oregon courts, and Clackamas County will be ordered to abide by the agreement. The impact of such a breach on Clackamas County taxpayers, at least those that live within the jurisdictions of Metro and TriMet, is that they will have to pay for the lawyers on both sides of the lawsuit. And all Clackamas County taxpayers may end up paying more on the agreement if the delays resulting from a breach of the agreement increase the cost of the project. I have previously mentioned several other ways that light rail opponents are acting against the interests of the Clackamas County taxpayers. They want to raise the taxes we pay to foreign governments such as Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Venezuela for their oil. They want to add urban sprawl to Clackamas County by emphasizing more roads, and they want to increase the profits of big oil. They want taxpayers to pay for multiple elections on such trivia as trimming branches over tracks and replacement of burned out light bulbs at a light rail station. In fact, this measure is so poorly written that if a passenger on a light rail car stopped at Clackamas Town Center, had a heart attack, and 911 was called, the dispatcher could not send an ambulance until a vote was taken to authorize the dispatch of the ambulance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
John Ludlow, candidate for Clackamas County Chair. That's interesting to hear all those legal renderings about the initiative petition for light rail, especially in the light of the Mount Hood Freeway. Not only was that canceled by a variety of sources, I mean, they cut a swath through Clackamas County, eliminated buildings, moved buildings, condemned property, and yet it was withdrawn. How could that possibly happen? There is a cancellation clause, of course, in the intergovernmental agreement, and if it wasn't there for a reason, what reason is it there? I read with interest the Clackamas County Sheriff's input about this current budget and the betrayal, really, that the Clackamas County Commissioners were about to perpetrate on the residents of this county. He laid off 19 full-time deputies last year. He'll do 11 this year. 20 community correction officers, and eliminate a lot of beds for prisoners. Recidivism is a very big problem, and I work with, I think some of you know, with Coffee Creek Correctional Facility to try to stem that, and have done that for 10 years. And part of that is community corrections. And we can't continue to give lip service to the sheriff about how we're going to protect the public and yet reduce his general fund budgeting. The county has done numerous polls, and the polls always seem to come out that public safety is number one and roads are number two. Since the citizens feel that way, it would be great if the commission acted that way. You can't return the sheriff back to the 05-06 funding levels and continue to reduce the boots on the road and the officers behind the wheel. And it's priority time. So the orange line at $25 million, much talk has been made about how you'll get that money. At a need of $25 million, if you did it over 20 years, it costs you approximately $1.8 to $1.9 million, including debt servicing. How can you possibly do that when we're cutting everything else and prioritize something like the orange line? You'll probably go to the Clackamas Town Center, and after 30 years of not paying their share of schools, fire, police, library, and county services, you'll obligate them for another 20 years, technically, by taking that money and giving it to light rail. The people are going to make a judicious and almost legislative decision here soon in September about whether they want light rail to enter the county. I think you should pay close attention to that. Thank you.
The next card I have is for Robert Shannon.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Shannon, Damascus, Oregon. Excuse me. I'm talking about light rail. The amount of money going to the light rail is, where are they going to come up with this money? $25 million. I mean, this is ridiculous. And the roads all over the state, or even in Clackamas County, are falling apart, and we're spending this money on this light rail thing. I don't know, 4 of you people are for the light rail, and one is against it, you know, and I don't understand why you 4 Democrats and 1 Republican. You know, this is not right. I mean, the odds, I mean, I got some more here yet. See, what have I got? For one thing, the government is broke. They are printing money out of thin air, not backed by gold and silver. But the Senate has the power to do away with the Federal Reserve, which is not federal at all, a group of world bankers. The public should know, well, I don't know whether any people know it or not, but anyway, it started back in 1913 during President Wilson, let's see here, Woodrow Wilson, yeah. And it was done during the Christmas vacation, or when they adjourned, done Jekyll Island in Louisiana, and President rejected, let's see here, regretted that he signed the treaty. At the present time, Congress calls for funds. It is sent to the Treasury for printing the currency denominations. The bankers then add interest on the money. The money has no value, period. The money you have is no value. No value at all. I don't know if you people understand that or not. I don't know. You have an answer or anything? Or
You had a question?
Yes.
What was the question?
Pardon me?
What was the question?
Well, do you know why the Senate hasn't done away with this Federal Reserve System? I mean, you got this Ron Wyden.
Look it up, and I'm not sure I have an answer.
Well, this Ron Wyden, he lives in New York, and he's not even representing Oregon. And this Blumenauer, he's for this China most favored nation. See, that's the trouble here. We got this free trade during the Clinton administration, and these business goes overseas for this cheap labor. You know, that's why we won't have any jobs there. I mean, I don't know, people, if they don't start waking up, the government is broke. They're borrowing, that's borrowed money. You know, who's going to come up with it? The last thing I heard was everybody in this country is indebted to about $100,000, the national debt.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
That brings us to the consent agenda. And I'll ask the clerk to read by title only.
Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, approval of a contract with Oregon Department of Transportation for federal 5311 Rural Transportation Program funds for operating expenses of the Mountain Express bus service in the Hoodland area. Request for approval to apply for a federal grant from the U.S. Department of Labor Veterans Workforce Investment Program. approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the Community Development Division and the Estacada School District for the School-Based Health Center project, a board order approving the mental health director's designee to authorize a custody hold under ORS 426.233, approval of amendment number 4 to the intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County for a public health, sorry, I got cut off, officer. Approval of a facilities use agreement with North Clackamas School District number 12. Approval of amendment number 2 to an agreement with Oregon Health Science University to provide consulting for emergency medical services, and approval of a professional, technical, and consultant service contract with Folk Time, Inc. to provide peer support services. Approval of a renewal intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Consumer and Business Services, Senior Health Insurance Benefit Assistance, to support the Volunteer Connections SHIBA program in providing information, counseling, assistance to seniors and other Medicare recipients on health insurance matters, and approval to apply for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Primary and Behavioral Health Care Integration Grant. And Steve?
Yes, well done, Mary. Thank you. I'm going to take it and finish up the lap here. Under Department of Transportation and Development, 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Oak Lodge Sanitary District for a preliminary engineering study for the Boardman Creek Fish Habitat Restoration Project. Number 2, approval of amendment number 1 to the contract documents with Harper Hoff Peterson Regalis, Inc. for consulting engineering services for engineering design and plans for the Industrial Way construction project. Under Finance Department, board order closing the change fund account for the Community Solutions WFI coffee cart. Board order closing the petty cash fund account for the Community Solutions WFI coffee cart. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Number 2, approval of the intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and the USDA Forest Service Mount Hood National Forest Law Enforcement. Under County Council, number 1, resolution authorizing the withdrawal from Special Advocacy Fund. Under Department of Emergency Management, approval of amendment number 1 to the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Portland for the 2011 Urban Area Security Initiative, UASI, Grant Award. And that completes our consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. All of these are available online if someone wants to read them in their entirety. With that, I would consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Leininger that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0, which is unanimous. And with that is the county administrator update. And perhaps, I know we have budget members waiting to come up here. We're a little late, but perhaps you could clarify the budget issue relative to where we ended up.
Yes, and why we're coming back.
With the Sheriff's Department compared to...
with the Sheriff's Department.
Well, yeah.
Well, where we ended up was there was a presentation made by the sheriff who had concerns about the ability to fund positions in jail and patrol, et cetera. And the board considered, I should say the Budget Committee considered that and has determined to provide some additional funding to make the sheriff more complete and whole in those matters. And I think it's, we'll work out the details, but I think it's a reasonable solution that will work in that line. In community corrections, we are going to try to maintain funding for the first 6 months of the year. And I would clarify on community corrections, the biggest problem is the lack of state funding that's been reduced over the last couple of years due to state problems. We're continuing our general fund support. We're trying to add to it, but it's difficult to make up that difference over the long haul. But we're certainly going for the first 6 months, and we'll hope for a longer-term solution in the meantime.
Thank you. Any other?
That's all I have.
And with that, unless the commissioners have burning issues, perhaps we could put off commissioner communication and and have our budget people come up.
I just think there's just needs to be a couple of things, and I'll be very brief in the interest of time because I do understand we're a little bit late. But I think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, when I listen to the testimony up here, and sometimes I hear things that are really fact challenged, you know, or misinformation. It's a little frustrating, but it's also frustrating from a standpoint that, you know, what can we do to make that better? And I think after looking at this for a while, I think it's really maybe a better idea. The meetings of value, and I've said this before, the meetings of value where we really get to talk about deliberation, talk about all these things are going to be at our regular business meetings on, I won't say business meetings, but our work sessions on Tuesday. And it's very interesting, as Chair Lehan alluded to, you know, we did discuss this in about a week's worth of budget meetings. We've covered a number of these issues. But, you know, one of the testimonies I did hear, yeah, a contract's a contract. And if there was no intent of terminating or no opportunity of having a termination clause, there wouldn't be a termination clause in there. So it's there for a reason. So I think that was one thing that resonated with me. But the other thing here is I think on the so to speak, the eve of the budget meetings with the Citizen Budget Committee is that, you know, our sustainability, the debt that was spoken to earlier, the debt per citizen in this country, the debt we have in the county, the debt that TriMet has. But, you know, here we are, and I'm a little frustrated because after the budget meetings, I really don't see a fiscal sustainable path with the 5-year projection moving forward. That's frustrating for me. We do have a lot of debt, and we're about to encumber more debt by virtue of this one particular contract. We have an agreement with an agency that has a tremendous amount of debt and does not have a foreseeable fiscal sustainable path forward to deal with their debt. And that, as of last Tuesday, on the day of the FFGA signing, that agency signed a contract with the federal government who has an extreme amount of debt that we all are involved with, and they don't have a fiscal sustainable path forward. So, you know, there's a theme here going. We all have a lot of debt, and none of us have the means to deal with any of that debt in any of our capacities, and yet we're signing contracts to encumber more debt. So it's frustrating. I do want to remind everyone that the first Wednesday of every month is a community roundtable. That'll be on June 6th, Wednesday evening. And I want to thank all the budget committee members and the people who showed up the citizens who did show up at our budget committee meetings to play a role in either support or observation. So thank you all.
Okay. Any other burning things people need to get across, or can we invite our budget people?
We can adjourn this, and then we'll reset the next meeting.
So if not, then we are adjourned with the commission meeting, and we will
move seats around. 5 minutes.
5 minutes to reset.
rearrange the room.